to Legal Bites of a Coffee, an ENS podcast where legal insight meets coffee conversation. I'm Priyanka Raj from the ENS TMT team, and every few weeks I'm joined by a guest who's either from one of our African offices or an industry partner, or like today, one of our clients, to discuss what's happening at the intersection of tech, regulation, and business. Together, we unpack stories making headlines, challenges emerging in our practices, and the contractual and governance questions that companies are navigating in an increasingly digital world. So pour yourself a cup and let's get into this week's Legal Bites. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Lufuno Shinwana, who's the head of legal and compliance at Danone, or in our world, we just go by the lingo GC. So welcome, Lufuno. Danone is a food and beverage multinational founded apparently in France more than a century ago, Lufuno. I read that earlier when I was prepping.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. It's been a minute. You've walked many walks, and I'm really excited for your journey now at Danone. But can we start with this more than a century ago piece? That is a very long time
Yeah.
ago, and like you're heading quite a massive portfolio at an old company. Then, as I imagine that brings with it some challenges.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think that's the beauty about working for a global company, that you obviously benefit from the experience and the track record over a number of years, but you also are an organization that has to evolve with the times. And I think pretty relevant to the conversation we're going to have today. So with that comes a number of challenges in terms of looking at, systems. Are we fit for operation currently? How we deal with crises. These may be data breaches and the like, for example, and also how we are becoming better and more efficient to essentially make sure we are delivering our products to consumers as fast as possible. And in our business, it's all about it being as fresh and cold as possible. So all of those play into various legal challenges in the background that happen.
That is super interesting. Okay, but I actually jumped the gun. We need to start with a very casual chat about coffee before we get into anything nitty-gritty. So before we get into it, let's start with coffee. How do you take yours?
So awkward because I'm actually not a coffee drinker.
Why did
So
you agree to be a guest on this podcast?
because I thought, we'd speak about some other hot beverage. So I'm a tea guy, but I will take a coffee break with my fellow hot beverage lovers. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I have had a few guests. Some don't drink coffee at all. Some drink a lot of coffee. So this podcast does not discriminate, I will say. So you don't need to feel too in the dark.
Yes, we love an inclusive space.
Do you want to guess how I take mine? We've never had coffee together in the same room, I don't think. So you
No.
would be completely guessing.
I would say black,
Okay.
no sugar.
Mm. Those are two very good guesses. I don't take sugar, so good guess. I take my coffee with milk more often than I don't. I had it if it's like a weak bean, I'll ask for it black. But then I just feel like it's like drinking on an empty stomach. Like I have to, if I'm having black coffee and it's first thing in the morning, it's too strong for me.
Yeah. And before we move on, what are your thoughts on matcha?
It's pretty. It's
Yes.
uh it's a good look. It makes me feel like it's summer. The taste though, I don't like it. I don't like matcha in its purest form. I like it in like Starbucks has like a matcha latte or a matcha like iced latte or something that's really nice. So I like it
Mm.
when it's very diluted, basically. You ask makes me it makes me wonder that you are a matcha
No,
drinker.
definitely not. But I thought we'd bring in the matcha drinkers to the conversation as well, so we don't
We have to be
discriminate.
inclusive. We do
Yes,
have to be
but I
inclusive.
do sadly think it tastes like grass, so not for me.
Okay, you asked me a question like that, and I was like, this is a test, and he either hates it or he loves it. I'm gonna give an answer that kind of caters for both.
You did well.
Okay, well, now that you said that, I can be honest with you, I hate it.
Yeah. Same.
Okay, let us get into our first proper segment, Lufuno. Thank you for that. It's called Tech on the Ground. So I'd like to start by looking at what's happening in the food and beverage industry. And before I start with you, I wanted to also share something that I came across reading in preparation for this episode, but looking at just what's happening in specifically the beverage industry side of things that you might be able to comment on. But like, how is tech disrupting those spaces, and what are the trends that we're seeing globally? And I'm not sure where Danon sits with this tech strategy, but it's been very interesting to see how we some warehouses are already using like smart technology in how they manufacture beverages, which is interesting. Like, and it's in the standard ways you see AI and tech being used in production, but when you're using technology to actually try to reduce labor force or wastage costs and trying to figure out how do we, use technology to reduce spoilage in our warehouses, that could affect product quality, or um, there's a company I can't remember their name, but they're actually using technology to control the temperature in the warehouses to maintain
Mm.
optimal storage temperatures. So it's very interesting. I mean, just this morning I was speaking to my hairdresser who showed me her GHD that she just got, and the GHD has this new technology of picking up the type of hair you have, and it just adjusts its temperature to make sure it doesn't overheat your
Wow.
hair.
Wow.
And I was like, this is incredible. Like, I cannot believe that even in a hair product like a straightener, they're bringing in AI. So it really is disrupting all spaces. But are you able to share anything from your guys' side with how tech is either being embraced or turned away by Danone?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are various ways, and I mean, I have the privilege of not only having been in this business, but having been in another business before, and just generally in the FMCG space. So I think
Mm,
it's two-pronged, right? I think that the first way in which tech is disrupting the space is with respect to route to market. So how products are getting to customers, and I'll differentiate customers and consumers. So think of customers as retailers who are
right.
selling these products, and consumers would be you and I. And so how are we, ordering these products, as how do customers order these products? So previously, a lot of companies had, a call center, and a number of organizations are moving away from that and developing applications where customers are ordering these, products and managing stock and demand on these applications that are developed for that purpose. And so that ensures predictability for companies in terms of demand planning and forecasting, because you're able to get live on the go view, and you can also monitor exactly where the ebbs and flows are. So that gives you insights as to when to maybe do a promo or any specials, because you have active data that is on your
Yeah.
fingertips, as opposed to waiting at the end of the month to kind of see what the orders were for the month. So that's one aspect in terms of how products are actually reaching consumers, which is obviously the most important part, because that's where you make your money. And I think secondly, it's what you've said in actual manufacturing processes. So how are those processes streamlined? I mean, there are various aspects that we can drill down to. There's a quality element, there's a waste element, there's an element on efficiency as well, on cleaning, testing, that kind of thing, where people are finding ways in which automation is making lives easier. And even just on day-to-day processes where, things are lying in Excel sheets and it's death by PowerPoint at presentations, but finding ways in which you're able to communicate those aspects through AI in ways that are more consumable and just are able to be interpreted much quickly, and then you're able to make decisions. Because, while we speak about automating in manufacturing, all of those lead to certain decisions. So either you need to change a certain process if it gives a certain result, or you need to change machinery and the like. But I think for me, what tech is enabling business to do is make better and faster decisions. And that's incredible because ultimately the consumer benefits from that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of negative noise about consumer data being used and manipulated and exploited. And it's interesting for me as well because I have my privacy legal experience,
Yes.
and you would think that would make me more conservative and more, I guess, hyper aware of these risks. But as a consumer, I love it. I say use my data and use it properly. Like send me the good stuff. Like give me the targeted ads. You know me better than I know
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
Just I want to shop for the right things. Like, the product. Sometimes I'll think of an ad I saw on Instagram and I'll forget the company a couple days later, and I'll tell my husband, I'll say, listen, I'm just gonna go back on Instagram because I'm sure I'll get the same ad that'll come to me soon. So that I can remember what the product was that I wanted. And sure
Yeah.
enough, it comes up. So I think data, if it's used well by companies, you end up with very happy consumers. And ultimately, I mean, and the purposes are more or less aligned. Like from the company's perspective, you want to make sure your consumers are using your products in a way that enriches their lives and makes sense for their needs, and you need their data to do that. But
Yeah.
obviously you just don't want to catch anyone by surprise. So I think it's like just finding that balance that's important, and then you end up having quite a satisfied consumer.
100%
I
agreed.
Yeah, like I was very annoyed with my phone health app because it had tracked my pregnancy for the whole 9 months. It knew I was pregnant, right? And then
Mm.
I had my baby, logged the birth, and then a couple days later it's saying, "Hey, you haven't taken a walk recently. Don't you want to get up and go on about?" And I was thinking, come on, technology, you have all this data. Are you really expecting me to take a walk
Yeah.
now? I'm not gonna use my data properly, please.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
our next segment. Oh, sorry, Luvuna, do you wanna say something?
Yeah, no, I wanted to say I agree with everything you've said, and I think
Yeah.
what's important about that relationship, in data collection is transparency. I think that's the main thing, and that's the thing that gets, I think, companies tripped up sometimes, where they aren't fully transparent to the data subjects what they're going to do with the data, and then it becomes frustrating to the data subject. And that has further implications because that tarnishes your brand and it negatively affects how consumers view your brand. So I think if transparency hinges that data collection process, you then have a better result because everyone knows what you're doing. And like you're saying, you're going back to Instagram to see the ad because
Mm.
it already knows you interacted or engaged with it. So you've already signed up to that happening. And so it becomes a useful relationship. So I think if transparency hinges it and people know what to expect and it's predictable, it becomes a more fruitful relationship.
100%. And I think it's not about how do we hide what we're doing with the data regarding these consumers. I actually find people like data subjects, they're not surprised that their data is being used. I think they get surprised when it's being misused and they didn't get that heads up about it in the first place. Like I think in terms of behavior, I'm very curious to know what companies track, like how many people actually do click on the terms and conditions
Yeah.
or open the privacy
Yeah.
policy. So it's a very easy thing to indicate compliance by making these things accessible. And I received so many emails from Google saying, we've updated our privacy policy. And like, even if I receive the same kind of updates several months apart, I'm not thinking, oh my word, what's going on? I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
cool. They're just letting me know what's happening and what's up. That's cool. And I think that's where we want to get. And people, I think a lot of organizations try to think, how do we make a change or do something without creating too much awareness of it? And it's just a shift in thinking, I think.
agreed, agreed.
So our next segment is called In Practice, and we can just chat about things that we're busy with. I'll come to you in a couple of minutes if you can just indulge me. I'm
Sure.
just going to talk about things that I'm busy with at the moment, and we speak about tech and making kind of the back end processes really nice and efficient. And I work on this all all the tech contracts for a client. They procure a lot of tech, so from big tech companies, small tech companies, all of that, and we are like drafting and negotiating like hundreds of contracts for them, and it's become both both an effort of like legal work, like core legal work, where you're doing advisory work, you're working with drafts and negotiating contracts and all of that with like SaaS vendors and
Mm,
IT consultants and all of that. But then the other piece is actual project management where you got to keep track of, okay, these are all the contracts you're sitting with. And
yeah.
every week I have to actually report to the client and say, because we report to their commercial, their technology, and their legal teams to say, these are all the contracts we're sitting with. This is where they are. This is how many are being negotiated. This is how many are being signed. And initially, we were doing it in such a ridiculously manual way where we had an Excel spreadsheet. I still have the Excel spreadsheet and tracking every single document. And I'll have my team update, where they're at in a particular document and so on. And now I've just discovered I can actually push that whole Excel document through our AI that we use as a firm, Harvey, and it created such a beautiful PowerPoint deck for me in in 2 minutes and
Wow.
accurate. Like it was excellent, like with really amazing metrics. Like this is how many vendors are in the environment right now. This is how many contracts we're tracking. It was able to pick up like of all of these, this is how many have been pending with the vendor for 100 days, or this is how many have been pending with your technology stakeholders for 10 days. And it was able to kind of like prepare graphs and charts. And I was just sitting at this thinking, this is nothing compared to my Excel is a joke compared to this PowerPoint that this technology just creates it. And it's really good because it's not something I can really justify charging a client for, like doing something as manual as a tracker
Yeah.
and doing all of that. And I find using AI is a really nice way to work on like valuable work for clients, but also keep fees low. And because there's very little time spent on creating a document that ends up actually being quite valuable. So that's what it's not what I'm busy with now. It's something I do every week, but I recently discovered this
Yeah.
way of using my AI, and I was just thinking, wow, that's really nice, really nice. So yeah, that's what I thought I would share from my side, and from your side, life as a GC. What I'm sure every day looks different for you, but what are you up to?
Yeah, every day does look different. Various things pulling my way, whether it's, agreements, negotiating contracts and the like. Also busy on the compliance side, investigations and that kind of thing. So a lot of varied work, but a lot of it leveraging technology, surprisingly.
Mm,
So, I mean, on the compliance side, there are a number of applications that you use in order to deliver the compliance program that we have. But I think more interestingly, on the contracting side, in the process of working on the deployment of a contract management system. And,
nice.
I think that's it's something that's always topical in the legal industry. In previous roles, I was involved in doing the same. But I think I found the process that I'm going through now different because we have great support from a global company, which obviously has access to kind of some of the cutting edge tech and finding ways in which on the legal operations side we can do things better. And I mean, I think often some of the legal colleagues I've spoken to in the industry, we often have very small teams. And,
Mm,
if you look at bigger firms globally, they actually have legal operations teams who are finding ways to enable teams to become more efficient. But when you don't have that privilege, it is the tech that helps you do things faster. So I'm quite excited to be on this journey because it's going to be a new way of contracting. Particularly, I think in the in-house space, what often lags contracts is approvals and decision making. So you were speaking earlier to doing a lot of reporting to commercial teams.
mm,
So
mm.
it's that, but also making sure that the right people are going to sign. But before they sign, they need to be comfortable that the contract has gone through the rigor that it needs to go through, and the people who need to review and approve have done so. And managing that approval flow in terms of thinking about delegations of authority and the like
Yeah.
is quite a process. So I'm quite keen to see how it's going to pan out because, the system that we're working on is meant to be a one-stop shop to manage all of that. So that is, currently on my plate and something I'm actively working on with the developers. So yeah, quite exciting.
That is exciting. It's definitely a step up from my Excel to AI PowerPoint generated documents, but it is in that space as well where you're trying to use tech as an enabler and just to make you do your work the way you used to, but almost be able to do it, better, more efficiently. So that's the whole, I think, idea behind using these technologies. But
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
I
it's
think
it's yeah.
maybe to add to that, it's using tech as an enabler, but I think another way is also using it as a safeguard because we're increasingly in a world of audits, of reviews, dawn raids by regulators, of information requests and the like. And if we're getting better at organizing ourselves and finding places to put information in reliable sources, you're more equipped to be responsive to information requests from an information regulator, for example, because you've already put those processes in place. So I think often we think about tech as driving us and making us more efficient and faster, but it's also kind of acting as a safeguard to ensure that we are complying with everything we're meant to comply with. So I think we need to think about it as that as well, in a way in which we can kind of end to end just become a more holistically efficient organization.
I love that perspective, especially because I think a lot of people see tech as risky, and there's so much now, not just locally but globally as well, where AI is seen as a threat to compliance or aggravating your risk areas in a business, increasing board oversight and all of this. And there's a lot of, I would say, fear being created around technology and the various offshoots. And it's really refreshing to hear that perspective. So thank you for bringing that positivity into the conversation.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the anxiety is stems from the lack of research and knowledge, right?
Yeah,
Because there are lots of opinions going around about AI, its effects, what it means for for jobs and work and all of that. But I think if people actually engage the systems and actually engage the various um, AI options they are able to actually see how it's driving efficiency. And I think, to your point earlier on getting this AI generated PowerPoint that kind of saved your time, it requires a pause for reflection for you to ask yourself what value you bring and what you actually want to be focusing on, versus spending time figuring out Excel, which is really horrible. Or would you really want to be at the heart of the negotiation of the contract and protecting your client? And so I think it,
exactly.
it
Yeah.
it becomes it becomes an honest reflection as to we now need to really map out where we're adding value because if this was 5 years ago, and having been at law firms, I probably would have been charging for that Excel spreadsheet, because it's time spent.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yeah, and I think I 100% agree with you, and I think that's exactly what AI and whether it's AI or any other kind of technology, it's forcing us to actually think, have another think about our roles because it's not just about like in my world, it's not then just about your time spent. It's like, okay, I'm now saving time that I could be doing, as you say, like I can be using this to do complex legal work, rather than spend the same hour preparing an Excel document. You're charging the client the same because it's measured by time, but what work you're outputting, I think, becomes your distinguisher. So it really is an important time, especially for like the junior lawyers that are growing up now
yes,
in the industry with this technology. Is how do you leverage it? How do you collaborate with it to enhance your work and or allow you to grow in other areas as well? So, we don't need our juniors to take notes in meetings now. Now we can
yeah,
actually get them to bring a different perspective to a meeting
yes,
rather than just sit there and take notes. Because that's what I was like when I was doing my
yes,
articles. That was my role. I had to take notes
yes.
in meetings. And now that's very, very well done now by technology. So I think it's a really cool time for the industry. I'd love to hear more about the platform you guys are working on, perhaps separately. But that is exactly what we need more of. It's just you spend so much time drafting and negotiating the contract, but the real issue is in implementation and operationalization of that thing. And then now you have to keep track of when does it renew and what happens on termination and all of these little
Yes.
triggers. And it's so hard to, if you had just one contract you were managing, maybe it's fine, but your world, you'd have 100 of those. So it's very tricky. So good luck as the rollout continues.
No, thank you. And I mean, I think another thing to mention that generally I found that any kind of tech implementation or rollout, the big thing is change management. It's
Yes,
it's
yes.
actually getting people to use this new thing. And I'll be honest, it's very hard. But I found that the way you get people across the line is if the product is good. And I think a lot of GCs, what we need to do is be able to discern the good from the bad, right? Because there are a lot of products out there. And so this world is forcing us to step outside of our comfort zones and actually seek out tech and study it and learn it. Because at some point, someone is going to ask you to make a decision as to which one to buy. And you need to be able to make an informed decision
Mm.
because if the thing is not used 6 months down the line, that's capex that's lost. And so it's very important that when you are picking tech as a GC, it's fit for purpose and it's something you'll be able to sell in your organization internally for people to use so you can ultimately get ROI from it.
Exactly, exactly. Thanks for that. Okay, our last sort of serious segment is called Clause of Choice before we wrap up, Lufuno, and it's the point of the podcast where I say to my guest, "What have you brought for us?" So it's a clause or a concept that you're currently grappling with, or you think that is interesting, or something you want to share, or that you've been thinking about lately. So, what have you brought for us?
Yeah, so Priyanka, my background is competition law. So I'm a
Mm,
competition lawyer at heart, even though I'm more of a generalist now. But one of the clauses that I always enjoy are exclusivity clauses.
mm,
And you see these arrange like a number of contracts across different industries in different ways.
yeah.
It's a recurring clause that comes in that always makes people pause and stop to say, let's have a look at it. And I think, every time it's almost like it's a stopper where, it's people want to review it, negotiate it. So it's always an interesting clause to review because it attracts a lot of scrutiny, either internally from a business, but similarly, it could also attract scrutiny from a regulator's perspective. So that's one of my favorite clauses and always one that kind of stops me in the tracks to kind of see if we're getting the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah, it's one that comes up in my space as well. Not always though. It comes up particularly around conversations for IP or very bespoke. technology is being developed
Yes.
and, where the customer really wants this technology exclusively to give them a competitive edge.
Yes.
The conversation becomes, it turns on exclusivity and what that looks like and why they're asking for it. It's often people will put these things in and they actually don't know why they need it or what they're asking for. But
Yeah.
then it becomes a conversation less about legals and more about commercials. What's the point of having a clause like that? And do you want to put a time box on
Yes.
it, and for how long, and then what do you want after that time expires? Do you want some kind of payback? Or it's just a very, I agree with you, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite clauses, but I know your perspective and why you think it's good from your perspective. But it's an interesting one that I find really really changes the conversation from a legal, purely contractual one to one that is quite commercially driven. So a fascinating one. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's ultimately a commercial decision, and obviously our job is to make sure that it's within, the legal guardrails. But I think you're right in that there are ways around it. So is it a time frame? Is it specific to a specific, innovation or product?
Mm,
Is it specific to a specific geography? So there are ways in which you can narrow it out depending on the commercial objective.
absolutely. All right, so we're gonna have a game to close things off, and I'm gonna end with a quick game. I always do, and it's just rapid fire views from you on whatever I'm talking about, if it's like a risk or a trend or debate on technology
Okay.
law and regulation. So my game today is called GC's Choice, and I'm gonna give you options, and let me see here, 5 questions, and then for each one, you're just gonna give me a rapid answer. You don't have to justify it. I've had a lot
Okay.
of legal and non-legal people on the podcast, and all the legal people like to justify their answers, but you don't have to justify. Okay.
Okay.
Question one, you can only keep one. Which are you choosing? Option A, perfect cybersecurity, or option B, perfect privacy compliance?
I'll take privacy compliance.
Yeah, good one. Question two, you're launching a new AI product tomorrow. Which expert do you get on speed dial? Option A, an AI engineer, or option B, a regulator?
Hmm. I think the regulator.
Hmm. Question three, this isn't a tech question, but you have to eliminate one from your life. It's either email or meetings.
Email.
Really? Question four, which challenge would you rather tackle? Option A, a major data breach, or option B, a surprise regulatory investigation?
A data breach.
Question five, you can wave a magic wand and instantly solve one issue for every business. Will it be option A, third party or vendor risk, or option B, AI governance?
Hmm. Third party vendor risk.
Okay. Answered like a true GC. All right, Lufuno, that's a wrap on today's episode of Legal Bites Over Coffee. Thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed our chat. It went by so quickly.
Yeah, it went by very fast. I also enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you. Well, this was fun.
Thank you as well. And to those who have joined in and listened to us, if you found it useful, you can subscribe. You can join us again as we continue to unpack the legal bites behind Africa's digital economy. So until next time, keep the coffee warm or your matcha, I guess, and your governance questions hot.